On the pasuk Umal Hashem Elokecha es levavcha v'es levav zarecha, that Hashem will circumcise your heart and the hearts of your children, the Targum translates V'yadei Hashem Elokecha yes tafshus liboch, that Hashem will remove the blockage or the foolishness of your heart. Now, simply what the Targum is telling us is, how does it make sense to say Umal, that Hashem should circumcise your heart and the heart of the children? Usually, milah, circumcision, is associated with the arla. In our case, it would figuratively be speaking about the arla, the blockage of the heart, not regarding the heart itself. The pasuk says Hashem will circumcise the heart. In fact, in a previous parsha, we had a very similar expression where it says Umaltem es arlas levavchem, you should circumcise the blockage of your heart. So seemingly over here, it should have said Umal Hashem Elokecha, Hashem will circumcise es arlas levavcha, the blockage or the foreskin of your heart and the arla of the hearts of your children. And that's why the Targum adds over here, in fact, as he translates in the previous parsha as well, he adds this word tafshus libach. In other words, he's adding this word that is referring to the blockage or the foolishness of the heart. And it's as if saying the pasuk is just being brief. It's as if the pasuk said arlas levavcha. The question, however, is why doesn't Rashi deal with this issue, similar to the way the Targum does? And as discussed a number of times, that Rashi will answer any question that comes up in Pshut Shel Mikra. We must say that according to Rashi, there's no need to deal with this question, either because there's no question to start with, or because in some cases Rashi dealt with this issue already in a previous Pirush, as discussed many times. So we need to understand what would be the explanation in our pasuk. Says the Rebbe, in regards to the pasuk itself, why in fact doesn't it say arlas levavcha? Says the Rebbe, we can actually say that it's understood just from the context and the flow of the psukim themselves. The pasuk earlier said, "V'hayu ki avoyu alecha," that when all the terrible things will come upon the Jewish people, V'shavta, and you will return to Hashem, you'll listen to His voice, you and your children, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshcha, with your whole heart and soul. That's what the previous psukim was saying. After that, the Torah continues with the pasuk V'shav Hashem Elokecha shvuscha, that Hashem will bring back all of those that were far away, and Hashem will bring you to the land, etc. Then the pasuk says, our pasuk Umal Hashem Elokecha levavcha, that Hashem will circumcise your heart. In other words, this circumcision of the heart is after Yidden had already done tshuva with their whole heart and soul. If that's the case, says the Rebbe, then it doesn't fit anymore to say that Hashem will circumcise the foreskin or the covering, the blockage of your heart, because Yidden are already in a state where they did tshuva with their whole heart and soul. So there is no longer any arlas halev, whether it's the foolishness as the Targum translates it, or as Rashi explains in other places, arlas levavcha, meaning the blockage of the heart or the covering of the heart, that the heart is blocked from being able to understand. In our pasuk, that would no longer fit. There is no arla. The Yid had done tshuva already. And therefore, says the Rebbe, in our case, when we speak about the circumcision of the heart, we must be speaking about a higher inyan in avodas Hashem. That's in addition to what was negated already earlier. In other words, there's already no more foolishness. Any blockages were removed already. The pasuk is now telling us is that there is something positive that's going to happen. As the pasuk says, what's going to be a result after the umal, after the circumcision? La'avas Hashem Elokecha. This is going to bring the Yid to a state of avas Hashem. Or to put it slightly different, earlier on, the pasuk was telling us that the Yidden are going to do tshuva, and they're going to listen to Hashem b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshcha, with their whole heart and soul. But that's possible, that they're even serving Hashem. That's also possible to be coming out of yira, out of fear. So our pasuk is coming and saying, Umal Hashem Elokecha, that Hashem is going to give you the circumcision, which will achieve that the Yidden will now come, the ahavos Hashem Elokecha, to actually love the Eibishter, to love Hashem, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshcha, with your whole heart and soul. So in other words, we asked the question originally of why Rashi doesn't explain what it means, Umal Hashem Elokecha es levavcha, and Rashi doesn't insert telling us that it's referring to the blockage of our heart. So the Rebbe is now telling us that it's actually not referring to the blockage of the heart. That was removed already previously if the Yidden did tshuva. This is clearly speaking about Hashem circumcising the heart in the sense of bringing the Yid to love the Eibishter, to love Hashem. But the question, of course, is, what does that exactly mean? What's the connection between umol, which usually means cutting away something or removing something, to this idea of influencing the heart, impacting the heart, to have ahava? Another question that Rebbe has is, from the words umol Hashem lekecha, that Hashem will circumcise your heart, that seems to be telling us that this is something that's not achieved by the person himself, but rather that Hashem has to do it. But the question is, if the whole idea of our pasuk is to bring to this idea that Hashem is going to circumcise our hearts, the point is to bring us to love Hashem, but avas Hashem is something that a Yid is commanded to do on his own. V'ahavtas Hashem lekecha, that's an obligation that the Yid has to do, to love Hashem b'chol levavcha b'chol nafshecha. In fact, we say this twice a day. So what is this idea of Hashem bringing us to this Ava? Says the Rebbe, this answer too is really understood when we look at the flow and the context of the psukim. These psukim of ahoyu ki avoyu alecha, when various different troubles will come on the Yidden, and that they're going to do tshuva, and that Hashem will circumcise our hearts, is coming after the psukim earlier were elaborating at great length the terrible situation of Golus, which comes as a result, as the pasuk says, that the Yidden had abandoned the bris, the covenant of Hashem. The Torah itself describes the reason for how this happened. The pasuk says in our parsha, Kiyatem Yadatem, you know everything that was going on when you were in Mitzrayim. Vatiru, and you saw all the abominations that Mitzrayim had. All of their disgusting and terrible things. And the pasuk goes on that there might be someone that levavo yifoina, that his heart is turning to go and worship the idols of these nations, etc. Says the Rebbe, from this we understand that umal Hashem lekecha es levavcha, when Hashem is coming to circumcise our hearts, which is after Hashem has brought us already into the land, into Eretz Yisrael, etc. The point of this umal is to remove, we asked before why milah seems to remove something. Yes, it is coming to remove the cause of the spiritual descent, the spiritual decline. It's coming to remove the possibility of being able to see negative things, and as a result of that, levavo yifoina, that your heart should turn into negative places. What does this mean? Says the Rebbe, when we speak about a Yid's heart turning away from Hashem, there could be two general ideas, two general causes which bring this about. And they're expressed in the two expressions, one that we were speaking about earlier, or las halev, the blockage or the covering of the heart. And there's another one which we just mentioned in this idea where the pasuk says, levavo yifoina, where a person's heart is turning after all the things that one sees, etc. What are these two different ideas? Number one is a problem, a shortcoming, or an issue with the heart itself. In other words, there's some sort of blockage in the heart, there's some sort of foolishness or some other covering, there's something not right in the heart itself, as a result of which he's inclined, he's drawn to negative things, to forbidden things. So that's one thing. Then says the Rebbe, there could be something else. There could be what we call an external cause, an external reason, something from outside the heart. As Rashi says elsewhere, ha'ayin roya, one's eye sees certain things, v'halev choymet, and that brings about that now the heart turns to there and gets excited and has a desire for these particular things. And this is actually the way a person declines and descends. That is, even before there is something negative, that the heart itself turned into something bad, something negative. In other words, even before there's some foolishness or blockage in the heart, so that on his own, not necessarily he has a desire for negative things, but there's this concept that a person sees something with his eyes, and that creates lusts and desires and temptations in his heart. And that's what the pasuk in our parsha is telling us. That the first cause to a spiritual decline of Bnei Yisrael was this idea of that there might be a person asher levavo yifoina, that his heart is turning towards something. This expression levavo yifoina represents the problem not within the heart itself, that the heart itself is a blocked heart, but rather that the heart is turning to something which could be coming because of an outside reason. Something caused the person's heart to do this. In fact, the pasuk is very explicit about how this came about. As we quoted before, Ki atem yidaitem asher yeshavnu meretz Mitzrayim. You were in Mitzrayim. You saw all of their abominations. And this caused that levavo yifoina, that now one's heart may have turned into that direction. Again, making reference to other things that the Yidden saw, that they might now want to worship their avodah zaras, their idols, which is very similar to what we said before, this idea of ayin roya, one's eye sees something, and now that caused the heart to have a desire for it. Says the Rebbe, based on this, we will understand. Number one, why the expression umol, that Hashem has to circumcise, cut away something, because what Hashem is coming to do over here is coming to remove this idea of one's heart being able to turn to something, even if he saw something. Meaning to say, Hashem needs to disconnect this automatic connection that happens between the things that we see, that automatically that should mean that our heart gets excited about it. That our heart should not desire the things that we see when the eye sees an abomination. This is going to be the chiddush of our pasuk. Furthermore, and we asked this before, why is Hashem the one doing the circumcision? We need Hashem to do it. Because a person has the ability to remove the arlas halev, the blockage of the heart, as we had an earlier pasuk, as quoted earlier from an earlier pasuk, that we need to remove the blockages of our hearts. We can remove the blockages and the foolishness of the heart. But this automatic connection that happens of when a person sees something and that his heart is automatically going to get excited about it, this is something that Hashem has put into the nature of a person, and it's only within Hashem's power to completely nullify this. And this is what the pasuk continues after Umal Hashem Elokecha es levavcha ve'es levav zarecha, that Hashem is going to circumcise your hearts and the hearts of your children. La'avas Hashem Elokecha, to love Hashem b'chol levavcha, with your whole heart, l'man chayecha, for the sake of your life. Meaning to say, since the person, Hashem had removed completely the possibility of the person's heart now just turning to things, getting excited about things that he sees, then automatically the person has this tremendous love to Hashem with his whole heart and his whole soul, l'man chayecha, meaning not just avas Hashem, love of Hashem, but in a way that it became his whole life. It's the whole life of the Yid is pure avas Hashem. Says the Rebbe, from all of this, we also have a very practical difference in the idea of what our avodah is all about in the time when we read Parshas Nitzovim, which is always at the end of Chodesh Elul. On this pasuk, that Hashem is going to circumcise es levavcha ve'es levav zarecha, the Baal HaTurim says that the word es levavcha ve'es levav is the Rosh Hashanah of the word Elul. And he says this is why we get up early to say slichas from Rosh Chodesh Elul and onwards. Now, from the fact that the Baal HaTurim connects to the Shetavus of the pasuk with the idea of saying slichus, this tells us that the Baal HaTurim is connecting the idea of Umal Hashem Elokecha as part of the avodah of tshuva. Now, till now in our Sicha we were saying that tshuva was done earlier, and Umal Hashem Elokecha is now another level. That's the idea of Hashem giving us the opportunity to be able to have avas Hashem. So the Rebbe is going to explain this now. So the Rebbe says, the Baal HaTurim's pirush, this would be the one that's more fitting with what we quoted earlier from the Targum, that says that that Hashem is going to circumcise the heart means that Hashem is going to remove the blockages or the foolishness of our heart, which again would mean more like the idea of that there's still a problem and this is related to tshuva. Whereas according to the explanation that we said up in the Sicha, according to Rashi and Pshutei Shel Mikra, that what our pasuk is actually telling us is really about the next stage. It's about bringing out avas Hashem, that we should love Hashem l'man chayech, and this is our whole life, because the removal of all foolishness and blockages was already achieved before Hashem removes does this milah on the heart itself. So according to this explanation, the avodah of Elul that's hinted in the pasuk of Umal es levavcha ve'es levav zarecha is not the avodah of tshuva and slicha, but rather the avodah of Ava. Because the whole chiddush of Elul is also in the area of Ava, as is understood from the other Rosh Hashanah of the word Elul, of Ani l'doidi v'doidi li, I am to my beloved is to me. Doidi is an expression of Ava, of love. And as understood from the famous mashal of the Alter Rebbe, that tells us that in the month of Elul is shining Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim, Hashem's 13 attributes of mercy, and he tells us this is similar to a king, that we go out and greet his face in the field, and he greets everyone with a shiny face and shows a smiling face to everyone, which obviously that arouses in everyone a tremendous ava to the king. Kamayim upon him, we see the king's smile and happiness with us, and we have ava to him, like the water that reflects the face that's looking inside of it. Says the Rebbe, we could say that this that we just said, that according to the Baal HaTurim, the avodah of Elul that's hinted in our pasuk is not really included in the next part about the Ava, is because according to the learning al derech haremez, which is the Baal HaTurim's way of learning, the idea of la'ava is really a higher darga in Avas Hashem than Chodesh Elul. In other words, just to clarify again, we said that the Baal HaTurim says that Elul is still somewhat associated with tshuva. Our pasuk, Malach Shem Lekechas Levavcha, is more associated with tshuva. It's according to Rashi that we said that our pasuk is focused on the ava, that Hashem is removing that connection between our heart and eye so that we could love Hashem. According to the Baal HaTurim, our pasuk is mainly speaking about tshuva, but the pasuk does further speak about avas Hashem. So here we're going to see that the Rebbe is going to see that according to Baal HaTurim, the ava is the next stage. But by first prefacing, says the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe explains that the difference between the avodah of Chodesh Elul and the avodah of the Yomim Noiroim that follow is that Elul is primarily the time of Ani L'Doidi, that I am to my beloved. It's what's known Isarusa de L'Sata. It's about our arousal, our awakening. Then come the Yomim Noiroim. That's going to be primarily the idea of V'doidili, Hashem's revelation to us. This is the time that Hashem's Malchus, Hashem's royalty, Hashem's kingdom is being revealed to us. Similar to a person going already to greet the king in Heichal Malchusa, in his palace. And who gets that? That's only the chosen people, a select few individuals. And it's specifically then that the Ava to Hashem becomes really, really deeply planted and ingrained inside the person on a much higher level. In other words, that the level of Ava and Chodesh Elul is not as high and as great as the Ava the one will achieve during the Yomim Noiroim, which is going to be mainly the time of V'doidi Li, Hashem's revelation to us. Says the Rebbe, according to all of this, we can now explain these two ways of looking at it. Whether Li'ava, the Avas Hashem, is part of Chodesh Elul, which was the way we said would come out according to Rashi, or the way we said according to Baal HaTurim, that really this Ava is already past Elul. Elul itself was more the Es Levavcha Ves Levav, that was more the tshuva aspect. So the Rebbe explains, according to Pshat, which is the level that's more shayach, that's more applicable to most people, to regular people, to all people. So in this level, one did not necessarily reach such high levels of avodas Hashem yet. There are certain levels that not necessarily all Yidden are shayach to. So therefore, the li'avas Hashem Elokecha that we're speaking about in the world of Pshat is a level of ava that all Yidden are shayach to. It's a lower level of ava, and therefore you could say it's part of the avodah of Elul because it's an ava to which we could reach even while you're in the field, even if you're not in the palace on the highest levels. So that's why we're saying that the Elul avodah is already the avodah of ava, but what we were saying is that it's going to be a lower level of ava. Whereas, according to the Baal HaTurim, when we speak about the limud al derech haremes, which is higher levels in limud HaTorah and therefore in avodas Hashem. So, according to the Baal HaTurim, again, our apostle was speaking about tshuva, mal Hashem Elokecha Slavavcha Veslav Zarecha, and the li'avas Hashem Elokecha is already a level beyond that. It's a higher level of ava, which is going to come after the avodah of Chodesh Elul. That's going to be mainly in the time of V'doidi Li in the Yomim Noiroim. And therefore, the beginning of the pasuk of Umal Eslavavcha Veslav Zarecha, according to the Baal HaTurim, is the avodah of Slichus from Rosh Chodesh Elul and all the days of Chodesh Elul. And only then in the Yom Noiroim, that which comes after Chodesh Elul, then one reaches this whole new level of L'avas Hashem Elokecha B'chol Levavcha B'chol Nafshecha L'man Chayecha.